Howdy of you delicious people. I'm here today to review the Book of Boba Fett, Season 1, Episode 6. So, of course, in this episode, we are really just tying in the Mandalorian to this show, giving him his own episode to really just go on and do certain missions to lead to have him be tied to both Boba Fett for the show and also to have possibly his own mission in the future or own side things that he is to go on and do. We go on into this episode, and of course, if people didn't remember the first two seasons of The Mandalorian, we're really just having a bunch of stuff here that is to retell us the story of The Mandalorian, but also a number of lore stories from The Mandalorians. Going on and finding out that there is a Mandalorian who is both a Mandalorian and Jedi, which is kind of interesting. How we go on and we have stuff like told out to us, like Beskar armor and stuff like that, that is to, I guess, be even so durable that it is to even rival lightsabers, which is kind of really interesting. So, going into this show, this episode, it's kind of fascinating because I do remember this character, even though I might not clearly 100% remember everything about The Mandalorian Season 2, because maybe I hadn't seen every single episode. But I do know, of course, where the end story goes of The Mandalorian, and spoilers for anybody that hasn't seen that. Luke ends up collecting Goku, or Groku, the Yoda baby, the baby Yoda, as everyone is to call and say and whatever about the name of this baby Yoda. So, we go on and we are to mostly talk about the Darksaber and the, of course, evolution of which that had gone from person to person to person. And we go on, we also have Mandalorian who is asking certain characters in this episode about certain people from which that he has spent some time with in the Mandalorian series. Really, I can go on and say that this show, much more so than The Mandalorian, is just continuing to figure out some way to make profit off of Star Wars, and I don't really enjoy that. I feel like we're consistently coming up with some money-making scheme or something that already exists that they are trying to make money off now, which I guess since certain Disney parks are open and certain Disney worlds are to be a thing, we now have to turn around and now use a show to now justify certain things for people to go into and for people to be like, oh my god, I remember that from the Book of Boba Fett. Oh my god. Some stuff that they had gone on and invented in the meantime, now all of a sudden this is a smorgasbord of figuring out some way to, hey guys, we've gone on and talked about certain franchises and certain movies, and we're reminiscing a lot of people on certain Star Wars shows. Now we have to go on and reminisce with them about Phantom Menace, or now we have to remind them about certain things, certain projects, certain whatevers. And now we have to go into the lore of the Mandalorians because we have it to where Boba Fett is not one of those. Boba Fett just goes on and takes his helmet off willy-nilly because he's not really a Mandalorian. And so when really looking at it, we're having Den here, who is to have to go and do a whole side mission, simply because he is a little bit different than Boba Fett, let's just say. So, with that said, there is going to be one part that I'm going to go into no specifics about, just because it feels so, like, there's too many details that I don't want to go into, and eventually we'll figure that out, and I'll spell that out to you, why I'm not, like, there's a bunch of parts and pieces that they're saying to go through. I'm like, I don't understand that part at all. So, with that said, let's just go into that double 5-time territory, because it's about that time yet again to go into spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this episode. Really like it because I feel like me watching Mandalorian was technically a payoff. But really, when looking at it, I also just don't like how this show is just so, like, how much sweaty money can we make off of Star Wars? That's what I honestly feel about this show. If there was, like, it feels like all the other Star Wars were just like, how cool could we make a story? Like, um how many cool things can we do with the Star Wars universe? This one is just like, but wait a minute, we can make money? We can make money now? So yeah, that's the awful part of the show. So with that said, because they're using a character to figure out how to make money, it's such a garbage thing. So let's get into it. So we have the Mandalorian that is, of course, to make it to the slaughterhouse at the very beginning of the show, to go on and find a bounty that is to be Kaba Gaze or Kaba Guys, Kaba or no wait, Kaba Bays, Kaba Bays, who I guess is in a slaughterhouse with a number of Klatooinians. Klatooinians, goofy name, and as well as any Star Wars character, it has to be like the weirdest, goofiest name that you can come up with. So we go on and we have Mandalorian that is making it through this slaughterhouse to go on and is to want this bounty. And so, of course, we have the Mandalorian who is telling Kaba, like, hey, you can come with me warm, or you can come with me cold. Really, of course, that is to re-reference, from what I remember from I think the first season of Mandalorian, where we of course have that reference being that that bounty could have come in carbonite, but we don't have that now because really the Mandalorian doesn't really have the one razor crest, which I'll talk about that later on. So we go on here and we have it where, of course, we have this guy that's consistently denying that he is Kaba, and we, of course, also have the Mandalorian that takes this, of course, uh, this tracker fob and is to say, like, well, yeah, this has to be you. And we also have it to where we have a little trinket for it showing a image of him also, and he's like, well, that's not me. So this guy is consistently just denying who he is, and so it just gets to the point where the Mandalorian has to go and slice through using his dark saber, which of course we saw at the end of season 2, where he went on and fought I think Moff Gideon to go and get that. um, So we go on here, and we of course have it where Mandalorian, of course, is going to win. Because is that a question? Is Mandalorian going to lose this fight and die? I highly doubt it. So we go on. We of course have the Mandalorian that's slicing and dicing through all these men, and accidentally is to slice into his own leg, having him limp through a decent portion of this episode. So we go on here, and of course we have, of course, the Mandalorian here who slices in half both this man and his table and goes and chops this guy's head off. And so now all the other Klatooinians who are, of course, kind of waiting to see what's going on. We have, of course, the Mandalorian telling all these guys, hey, like, I don't have any problem with any of you guys. You can go on and collect some Republican coins and really, like, go ahead. Like I have no beef with you. Slaughterhouse humor. So all these guys go on and go after the bounty and don't go after the coins that are left over. And Mandalorian is to just kind of start bumping into these guys. But we go on now, have him make his way to this place called the Dyson Spear in the Lacariath. Uh, Iorcath system? Sure. Really, I guess this is a reference from a book called The Ring World. It has this kind of same familiar kind of design, and a lot of people go on and say, "Oh, that's a Halo game thing." Whatever. I'm okay, sure. So we go on, and of course, we have them going to this Dyson Sphere, the Mandalorian, and he has to fly commercial with this commercial ship. So, because he no longer has his own ship now. So we go and have Mandalorian, who makes it to the Dyson Sphere, to go on and talk to uh, these guild masters, and one of them is to be uh, Ishitib. Ishitib. But while we make our way there, we go on and, of course, have this Mandalorian who's in an elevator side by side with a Kashadag, who, of course, I guess was in certain spots of certain Star Wars things. You can kind of randomly see him every once in a while. Not the same guy, but similar guy. So we go on, and of course, we have it where the Mandalorian is talking to this guild master at this club, and so he is to be wanting to know a certain location. And so the guild master is to eventually go on and tell him where to head. So, and that's kind of the really complicated thing that I'm not going to go on and heavily just dissect and whatever. So, we go on and are to have the Mandalorian go through a certain location to go on into finding this kind of like underground housing like area where he is to have to use his Mandalorian vision to go on and see that there are certain Mandalorian markings or hidden markings that only Mandalorians can see with their own helmets. Going on and showcasing to him where to go and find the armorer, which of course we know from season 1 from The Mandalorian. So we go on and have, of course, the Mandalorian who is going and having to walk down this ladder. I'm like, oh my god, like, that seems so silly for this armorer, and like we have like a ladder that has to make it down to her. Not only that, but then we have this like these steps also. I'm like, man, it must be horrific for anybody having to go and send this armor or any number of things, because you would have to just like you'd really have to be very creative to freaking get this down to her. So we go on and we have the Mandalorian, who of course is to fall in front of the armorer to go on and have a guy named uh, oh my god, where is he? Paz Visla, who of course is to help Mandalorian in his wounds. So we go on here, and of course we have the Mandalorian going and talking to the armorer about the dark saber, and we of course have Visla, who is to go and take the dark saber and give it to the armorer, and she's like, "Aha! And how did you get this dark saber?" And so the Mandalorian is talking about Foz Gideon and how he, of course, was to win this against him and have him go for his crimes and be arrested for his crimes. And we also have the armorer who's to realize that it seems that the Mandalorian is to have a spear called the Beskar Spear. And so we have the armorer who mentions to the Mandalorian, like, is like that's kind of a waste to have that thing as a weapon. Like, if anything, you should try to figure out how to master the dark saber, because it's a much more honorable weapon for you to have than the spear. and the Mandalorian is to mention it's like, well, I got it off of a Jedi, and so we really have it where the the Mandalorian is saying it's like, well, just go on and make the spear, just make it some kind of armor. And but we end up finding out that this armor is going to, instead of being used for the Mandalorian, instead it's going to be used for Grogu, the baby Yoda from of course the Mandalorian. That he's going to make Grogu a gift simply because he misses him for some odd reason. So, while also going on and talking to the armorer, we of course have the Mandalorian who's talking about uh, Bo Katan, cries. Bo Katan. He's talking to her, of course, about Bo Katan, of course, the girl who was in season 2 of Mandalorian, and those were the people that were also to take off their helmets, and of course were to go on and fight against Gideon and try to get the dark saber as well. And one of them was like Sasha Banks, and one of them, of course, was Katie Sackhoff, and Katie Sackhoff, of course, was Bo Katan. So we go on, and we also have the armor mentioning how the Mandalorians are like, who of course are like 10,000 years worth of history and stuff like that. And so they talk about a mythosaurus and all this kind of jazz. So we go on here and we have it where really they go on and on about the Beskar armor and how there's so much history there, where of course there is a Mandalorian and a Jedi who went on and had gotten this Beskar armor, and I guess at some point was to possibly go on and hold the dark saber. So supposedly in the Star Wars lore, there had been a number of interesting people that at some point were to hold the dark saber. Supposedly one of them being Darth Maul. Supposedly one of them being a number of evilish characters. But eventually we transition on to have Foss or Gideon getting it, and then possibly the Mandalorian getting it. So we go on here and have, of course, the armor going and melting this down, talking about Concordia, where there had been some origins of the Beskar armor and stuff like that. So we go on and we have the armorer who is training, of course, now the Mandalorian of how to use this dark saber and how to use certain ways to wield the dark saber. And so we of course have the Mandalorian that's saying that the dark saber is far too heavy, and every single time that he tries to wield it, it just gets heavier and heavier and heavier. To where, of course, the armor is telling her, or the armor is telling the Mandalorian that you can't just go on and wield this thing via strength. Like, you have to be like very focused, and like it feels like you're very distracted right now. And so you should go on and try to figure out how you can like wield this dark saber a lot better. So that way you can go on and be a Jedi. Are we gonna have one point where somebody's just gonna be a Jedi at this point? Because it's pretty dang close. So we go on and we finally have it where we just have Paz Visca or Visla, who is really just at this point just thinking that since this dark saber is to be more with his ancestry, that maybe he should be the one to actually wield it, and maybe the Mandalorian is not the perfect match for this, and that Paz here can go on and take this and be a much better owner of it. So we of course go on here and have a trial by combat where whoever is to be the winner of this is to keep the dark saber. So we go on and of course we have these guys who are to relinquish their jetpacks supposedly. I don't know the technical term of it. I couldn't be bothered. So we go on and of course we are to have uh, Visla, who is to use this shield generated shield, which for a lot of people could probably look like the Captain America shield in certain cartoons when he was to go on and lose his actual Captain America shield, and he would just go on and use this like this certain kind of shield that you can kind of see through. Uh, so So we go on, and of course we have the Mandalorian, who of course beats Visla here, and it's a really good, interesting fight where we have these like little daggers and shield generated shields and like all this kind of stuff, and the Mandalorian, just because he can't use the dark saber all that well, is to uh, go on and have it be taken from him via Visla. And so the Mandalorian is to go on and use his little weaponry, his little daggers and whatever, to go up against Visla, as Visla is trying to go on and wield the dark saber, and he is even having complications with trying to wield it because, again, I'm sure he's using strength instead of focus. So it doesn't seem like anybody's going to be easily wielding this dark saber anytime soon. So after, of course, we have at some point uh, where the Mandalorian is to go on and take down this guy and is to almost kill him. We go on and have the armorer, who is to mention that have either one of these Mandalorians ever gone on and taken off their helmet. And so we, of course, have the Mandalorian Den, of course, is to mention that he was to take off his helmet once. And so the armor is saying, like, well, you need to go on and make it to the waters of the mines of Mandalore to go and square that up. And so the Mandalorian goes on and tells the armorer, it's like, well, like that's a little bit difficult because these mines don't really exist anymore. And so we go on. We have the armorer who is going on to the event and talking about, of course, the uh, the night of 1,000 tears, where of course we go on and have Mandalore that is to have been destroyed by, of course, TIE bombers and a bunch of uh, Imperial probe droids and Imperial KXs, and like this scene kind of comes off very much like Judgment Day, like from Terminator 2. Like there's obviously a lot of moments here where it's very dark and it's very orange, and like I would have liked to see a lot more, of course, to make it look like Terminator 2, a little bit more silver, but like it is what it is with this story. So we go on here and we of course have uh after the Mandalorian is kind of done talking with with of course the armors and talking about all these events and yada yada yada. So we go on. We now have it where, of course, the Mandalorian needs to seek his own wheels out, his own ship, because we of course have the Mandalorian that is to be desperate to go and find his own ship because he is like very annoyed with having to go and fly commercial everywhere he is to need to go, and there's probably certain places where these ships can't get him to those locations or don't want to go to those locations. Hence, why the Mandalorian can go much freely. So we go on and have the Mandalorian that, of course, is to have gotten this uh, this Beskar armor, of course, from the armorer, and so he goes on and gets this little sack of a thing that is to be tied to look like Baby Yoda's face. So all of a sudden we have the Mandalorian that has to relinquish all of his weapons in this one case, and we have the Mandalorian telling this of course droid that is a R3X model that of course we've seen numerous times by now. We saw it in like the opening part of the show, and we consistently see this thing to now justify, I guess, there is some Disney park play show ride thing where every single one of these things are to be used, and it's like, oh, okay, so another just like, oh my god, that's Boba Fett thing, oh my god, ah. So this thing that like Disney already created, and now they're having to forcibly like jam it down your throat to just every time they are to use this droid, they're like, oh, okay, so that's where it's coming from. So we go on and we have of course, uh, another astromech droid that is serving drinks upon this commercial flight, and we also are to go and see a Rodan that I guess is to be a thing from reminiscing from the Boba Fett flashbacks, where I guess since Rodan is green, so it doesn't look quite like Guido green, but it's pretty dang close. We all of a sudden have the Mandalorian that's rethinking about Grugo, Baby Yoda, and just going on and just like reminiscing about all that. So we of course then go on and have the Mandalorian that's making it to Tatooine. So of course he can do some pod racing. No. So we go on and we have the Mandalorian that of course is to make it to uh, Peel's shop or Pelly's shop. Pelly's shop. So we go on and we have him go there to find a Razor Crest or a replacement for that ship. And so we go on and all of a sudden have a BD droid that, of course, is to have a broken leg. And I guess a lot of people are going on and saying that that has some reference to a Star Wars game. Sure. I haven't seen like all I've seen is like I've played like Star Wars Unleashed. I've played some like old computer games for Star Wars, but it's been a while since I've like played anything beyond that. So uh, anyways, we go on and we have Pelly, who, of course, with a number of service droids or also uh, a droid that I guess is to be very familiar from Star Wars Episode 4, an R5d4 droid, which I guess Belly is to buy off from these Jawas because if you guys remember that this is to be the one droid that is to malfunction and is to not work, for them to go and trade Luke and his father is to trade this droid now for an R2D2. So same droid. So we, because I remember that only because like I remember getting the action figure for this. I'm like, okay, like why am I getting an action figure for this droid? And then I had to go and search through the movie and be like, okay, what is this droid even? And then I went on and found, because the droid had this little thing where you would open up like the top of it and the back of it. You would open up and it had this like projectile weapon that I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool, but where is this droid from? And then I went on and found out that it's like, oh, it's just the droid that malfunctioned in episode 4. So I guess they're just trying to resell everything for stuff that had a very brief thing in some Star Wars movie. So we go on here and we have the Mandalorian who is to shoot this Womp Rat because, of course, it is to grab Peli. And so we go on here and we now have it where the Mandalorian is asking Peli, okay, like what's this new ship that you have for me? And so all of a sudden Peli is to showcase here that there is a N1 Naboo starfighter, which of course is to be the Phantom Menace, more notably known vehicle for those movies. And of course, this would probably seem like, oh, like, yeah, I remember Anakin driving this in The Phantom Menace, and I remember one blew up at some point. No, I remember this, and I remember that. Like, yeah, it's probably one of those same kind of vehicles. It seems that this one is to, like, they don't easily repaint it all yellow. It seems like this one is much more silver, which is kind of cool, and plus at some point, I'm sure it's probably going to be painted at some point, or really, it's just going to be a short-term thing used just to like, oh no, this ship that the Mandalorian is going to be in, it's probably going to blow up, and then he'll have to go and find his Razor Crest, probably in some other season of the Mandalorian, and we'll just go on and be like, wow, what was the whole point of that? To just reference that, oh, a money-making scheme. Okay, great. Because really, I'm sure they're going on and like trying to toy this all up. So they're probably using this thing as a justification of like, oh, here's the same thing that we're recycling out, but this time it's silver. Okay, great. So I'm being honest. So we go on and we have them, of course, repair this ship because the ship isn't all well and good to be like it's still a hub of junk, and the Mandalorian is to say that it's just junk, and so Peli is saying like, well, hey, if you help me fix this, and plus also if you rattle off any pieces to these Jawas, and we find out that Peli, I guess, had dated a Jawa at some point, but she's kind of working on herself right now. So we go on, and she also says that Jawas are really furry for whatever reason. I don't know, you can't really tell via the cloak. So we go on, and we of course have the Mandalorian that is to go on and ask for specific parts, like create some kind of wish list. And so we go on and have the Jawas bring the Mandalorian back a cryogenic density combustion booster thing. And we have like this long shaft of a like stick thing that of course we are to have remembered from the Star Wars film when both Han and Luke and Leia and Chewie were stuck in this like trash compactor thing, and it was starting to close in. Han was trying to use that piece to try and keep the walls from closing in, but eventually it bends and breaks and whatever. And so, like, I'm sure it's the exact same piece. I'm sure it's somebody had it in some museum somewhere. It's like, hey guys, remember this piece? Because everything has to be like, oh yeah, like we just remade this right for the show because it's a number of years older. So after they go and they rebuild the ship, we of course I guess have some kind of NOS port for uh, the Mandalorian to go into hyperdrive without needing a docking bay like thing to be able to do so. So we go further into this thing here, and we have Mandalorian that's starting up this ship. I guess there is not an R2 droid that this guy is to need because Peli is to come up with some modifications and whatever. Which really, when looking at it, I'm like, yeah, I didn't think that all of a sudden the Mandalorian was going to be rocking an R2D2 unit or whatever, or some kind of droid, because I'm sure he wouldn't probably trust them anyways. So we go on. We of course had the Mandalorian that is to start up this engine, and we go on and now have him wanting to run diagnostics, but Peli's like, no, just let her out. So we go on and we have the Mandalorian testing every bit of this like shit going on and mentioning how it moves, how fast it is, so on and so forth, having him going from or going into Beggar's Canyon, which of course is to have been originally the pod racing thing, but I guess that's not what it is right now because it's been numerous years since that time, and I guess they had just stopped doing pod races for whatever reason. So we go on here and we because I think we ended up showing at some point where I guess Anakin had crashed through some part of this pod racing thing, and I guess that never really got repaired because maybe Anakin's race was the very last race they ever did. I don't know. Who knows? Anyways, so we go on and have the Mandalorian that is going and is flying into space, really testing out this ship, going very closely to this commercial ship. All of a sudden, having a bunch of X-wing uh, guys that are going on and wanting to pull up side this ship to say, "Hey, guy, you're flying way too close to this commercial ship." And of course, the Mandalorian is like, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Like I was just letting the ship out." Um, and so they go on and they ask him about like, "Hey, like you don't have this on you, you don't have that on you. Like let me go and find some Like let me go and have you land here, and you can give us some license and registration and so on and so forth." And the guy's like, "Oh, I'm sorry that the Mandalorian's like, oh, I'm sorry. This is just um, a brand new ship or a brand new like fighter, so yada yada yada." So the more and more it seems like they're asking about if this guy is to possibly be that same Mandalorian from before because his voice sounds familiar, and so we just go on and have this Mandalorian that goes into hyperdrive and peels out, and so we go on to have one of the X-wing guys talk to the other, and it's like, well, hey, like, how is it that he was able to go into hyperdrive? It's like, well, like, I don't know. I guess the like people can do all kinds of modifications, but really they're gonna let this guy go because they don't want to do a mountain of paperwork. So they're like, okay, let's get out of here. So we go on, and really, the last bit of this is to have the Mandalorian show back up, of course, on Tatooine, where he's going and talking to Peli and just kind of mentioning about the ship. We of course have it to where the Mandalorian still wants a Razor Crest no matter what, because I'm sure it's only a matter of time before he gets back that kind of ship, because we have to have everybody get back their ship, even though it might be slightly tweakingly different, so that way they can sell this as like, oh hey, this is the exact same toy, but now it's powdered blue, or now it's yellow, or now it's red, or now it's this, but it's hey, it's a whole different thing. We're just gonna resell you something, but now it's a different color. Man, so it's just like it's a paint job thing, really. So we go on and we have the Mandalorian that all of a sudden is to see Finnick, and so they're going on and reminiscing about old times, so to speak. And we of course have it where Finnick is to now ask the Mandalorian to like, hey, you want to go on and work with us because of course we need muscle, and so the pay is really well as Finnick is tossing the Mandalorian this big thing of money, and so the Mandalorian chucks it back at Finnick, and he's like, "Hey, I'll like this one's on me. Like I'll help out Boba." So I'm assuming in the next episode we're going to tie in both the Mandalorian and Boba Fett, and we're going to have them go on a mission together, and probably maybe the Mandalorian is going to go on to the next season of the Mandalorian to do whatever mission that he has to go on and do. Because I'm assuming that they're only going to have this Mandalorian character in here for a very limited time. So I am going to get out of here after that, because I think that covers all of this episode. Let me know in the comments below how you feel about the book of Boba Fett. I also said the Mandalorian. The book of Mandalorian, because it's basically this episode. So with that said, I'm going to get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.